Elul, P Shoftim2 Elul.
P Shoftim. I'm turning to chapter Yud Zayin, Pasuk Yud Dalet. Chapter 17, Pasuk 40. Where the Pasuk tells us, P Shoftim2 Elul, Asher Hashem Elokecha Nosen Loch, Yerishto v'Yoshavto bo, v'Omato Asimo Olai Melech, Kekol Hagoyim Asher Sviv. When you will enter the land what the Eibishter is going to give you, and you have Yerishto means you've conquered it, and you will be dwelling in it, you'll sit in the land, and you will say, I would like to put upon myself a king, I'd like to elect over myself a Simo Olai Melech, Kechol HaGoyim, you have to sit the table. Time for that. We'll put everyone over here. You can't have to sit the table and have your safe on the table. And so you will say, I want to elect upon myself a king, like all the goyim who are around me. You'll be now in Eretz Yisrael, and as Rabbeinu Bechai is Mavaya, that Eretz Yisrael is the central point of the whole world. That's as well known. The Gemara Masechta Yuma says that Evan, which is inside the Beis Hamikdash, called the Evan Hashasiyah, on which they placed the Aron HaKodesh in the first Beis Hamikdash, but that is the foundation stone of the whole world. That when the Eibishter created the world, he created first of all that stone, and then he built the world around it. So the word Shvivoy Soy means that when Yidden said in Eretz Yisrael, then all the goyim are around him, that are surrounded.
I have to bring the basket back because
I can't hear what they're saying myself.
I have to bring the basket back to those schools because they're going to get mad at me if I don't bring it back. Is that right?
The cart for the groceries he needs to bring back to Lipskers.
Okay.
So, it reminds me of a Moshe, what we were talking about. Alright, so, Kekol HaGoyim Asher Sviv Yisrael, the Yidden are in the middle of the whole issue of the world. Excuse me, let me leave that till after, if you don't mind. Because what happens here, you don't need the mashkit to be cold. It's an old Meshuggah custom which has no basis in Hasidic Halacha. You can drink warm mashkit, you don't have to have cold mashkit. Never saw in my life such a business. Chassidim should be mad with that. Laugh, I've never seen it. It's just some sort of weird clipper saying coffee. So Yidden are in the middle of the whole creation of the world. Eretz Yisrael is the center of the whole Bria. And therefore, according to Rabbeinu Bechai, the Yidden say, we'll make a melech, all the goyim which are all around me. In other words, I'm in the middle of the world, and around me are all the goyim. So we see that the Yidden are likely to they're likely to claim when they get into Eretz Yisrael that they want a king. And they will say, I want to place on myself a king like all the goyim. Whatever that may mean at this particular moment. So then comes along a pasuk and says, yes, okay, that's what in effect should be done. Soim tosim olecha melech, you must place on yourself a king, asher yivcha Hashem Elokecha boy. But the Eibishter, your God, He will choose this king. He will choose him. Mikerev achecha tosim alecha. He has to breathe from the midst of your brothers, lo yisucha loses alecha ish nochi, ashaloi me'achicha hu. He has to be dafka from the Yidden. He can't be a foreign or unknown person, not from the tribes of the Jewish people. So the Gemara brings down a whole arichas about that even Gerim can't be made into Malachim. They can't become kings because they have to be dafke from the tribes of the Yidden from way back. So therefore we see that immediately after the pasuk is given, like a question or a permission in the minds of the Yidden, they might say, well, I'd like to have a miller. I'd like it to be like all the Goyim, Asher, Sviva Yisrael. Then the pasuk says, Soyim Tosim Alechem, you should take place upon yourself a king, but it has to be that the Eibusher will choose the king. Asher Yivcha Hashem Alekecha Boy. And then we see certain limitations and certain inyonim in the pomp and splendor of the king. Alpi din HaTorah. Lo yab lo yisusim. He shouldn't have more than is proper the number of horses. And he shouldn't have too many fleet of horses. V'lo yoshiv esa'am mitzrayim leman harbi sus. Because if he has too many sus, he might take the people back into Eretz Mitzrayim. Hashem Amad, the Eibusher already told you, Lo Yisoisifu Loshu B'derech Hazeh Oid. You mustn't go back into Mitzrayim ever. And so therefore there's a worry. The king will have a lot of horses that he'll take people back into Mitzrayim. It seems that Egypt was the source of horses in those days. Well, upon him, it was a source of choice horses, that they would be suitable for kings, etc., etc. And therefore you're not allowed to take, well, from that, there's a very big discussion in the great Halachic authorities as to whether you're allowed to live in Mitzrayim, as to whether you're not. And the famous pilpul when they get to the Rambam, that the Rambam Paskins stuck in Hilchos Malachim, the Rambam brings down that you're not allowed to live in Mitzrayim because of this in here. That you're allowed to take the people back to Mitzrayim, and the Rambam brings a whole arichas about living in Mitzrayim. Yet he himself lived in. The Rambam lived a large portion of his life in Mitzrayim. So it's a whole big question: how did he do that, and on what basis? And a whole series of long pulim and the great Poishkim. But it's not the place to get involved here in the whole inyan. But if we'd have noticed any interest on the noses of the people, then we might have said something about it, but it just seemed to be taken so natural by everybody. There wasn't any sign of any surprise, inquiry on any faces, so we'll leave it at that. Anyway, suffice it to say, v'lo yab v'lo yinoshim, you shouldn't have too many wives, because v'lo yosu levove, too many wives will take his heart away from what it should really be. And another thing, v'chesef v'zov lo yab, they shouldn't have too much money and so on. V'hoyo kishifte al kisei mamlachtoi, and when he'll be sitting on his throne, v'kosev leis mishnah haTorah hazeh, he should copy himself two Sefer Torahs. That's how Rashi learns it. Mishneh meaning a repetition, HaTorah referring to one Sefer Torah. He should have a Sefer Torah and a double Sefer Torah. And Rashi tells us that one he has to keep with him the whole time, and one that goes in and out with him when he goes out. But he has to have with him Keseda Sifrei Torah. That the Sefer Torah has to be with him, and he must read it all of his days. He has to learn how to fear the Eibusher. And that should teach the king how to guard all of the words of the Torah, and all the mitzvahs which we've been told here in the Torah. To to do them. Then the vilti rum levavei me'echov, that he shouldn't become elevated and think himself big and great above his brothers. Ulevilti sur mi'ah mitzvah yaminu shmoel, and that he shouldn't turn away from the mitzvahs of the Eibishter, not to the right and not to the left. Laman yarik yomim al mamlachtoi, that he should have long years on his kingship. Hu ubonov, he and the sons after him, bekerev Yisrael. So we're going to pay special attention to something that Rashi says in this last piece, that the king has to have the Sifrei Torah with him, or the Sefer Torah one with him the whole time, in order that he should always learn in the Sefer Torah, in order that to guard all the Divrei Torah hazais v'chachukim ha'eile la'aseitza. And then the vilti rom l'vavoi, and he shouldn't turn away from the mitzvah. So we need to understand, if he's got to guard all the mitzvahs, then that's the same idea of not turning away from the mitzvahs. Then why does the pasuk repeat that it says that he has to have the Sefer Torah with him the whole time, to remind him of all the mitzvahs which have been given, in order that he shouldn't elevate his heart and become big over his brothers? Well, we see from that gaiva, to hold yourself big, is a very serious inyan. And oddly enough, the Ramban learns here that this is a place in the Torah where we're told not to be about gaiva. It's forbidden to have midas hagaiva. Well, we learned that from this pasuk. It's not written anywhere in the Torah, al tiyeh bao gaiva, or don't think yourself to be big, or don't hold yourself important. Okay, is there. So the Ramban says, you see, it's written here that the king, as if the king can't hold himself big, and it's that he be a humble and cast down creature, then halachas kama v'kama ordinary people. However, upon him, he's not allowed, and if he does, then he might turn away from the mitzvah. Now, it's just been said that he has to guard all the mitzvahs, so why do we have to be told again that he can't fall into some mitzvah which might take him away from the mitzvah? So based on that comes along Rashi and says a very remarkable thing. Rashi says, Divrei HaTorah, he has to keep the Sefer Torah with him, and he must be reading in the Sefer Torah the whole time, in order that he should learn Divrei Torah. So Rashi says, Divrei HaTorah k'mashmoi, but that means the words of the Torah. So what are the words of the Torah? Achukim ha'eile, all the mitzvahs which are written in the Torah. And therefore Rashi says that's moving mi'atzmei k'mashmoi, meaning Divrei Torah, all the things written in the Torah, mitzvahs, eseh and mitzvahs lo yisaseh min haTorah. Now in the next pasuk, levilti sur mi hamitzvah, says Rashi, afilu mitzvah kalo shel novi, even an easy or small or apparently insignificant mitzvah given to you by a prophet. Afilu mitzvah kalo shel novi. Why would Rashi all of a sudden rise onto such an idea? She's bothered by the fact that we're already told he's got to guard Divrei Torah k'mashmoi. Divrei Torah means all the, and the pasuk even says kol hachukim ha'eile. It wasn't a time that he has to be careful not to turn away from the mitzvah, from mitzvah. So Rashi said it must mean another inyan in mitzvahs altogether, not the mitzvahs which you know all about, of some form of mitzvah that we don't know about. What could that possibly be? And how could that happen in the world, that there be a mitzvah that we don't really, there's something new that we don't know about, or some unusual inyan in a mitzvah that we wouldn't have, as they say in Yiddish, we wouldn't have chapped ourselves. What is that? So Rashi says, a mitzvah kalo shel novi. In other words, if somebody's been established as a novi, then even if he says apparently, easy, almost sort of not particularly obvious thing why it should be so important, then the king has to be guided to the point of levilti sor mia mitzvah. So now comes along Rashi, and he gives a dogma just how much that is important to the king, because the pasuk links it with what he called a t'nai, a condition, and it says levilti rom levavoi me'achov or levilti sor mi'amitzvah yaminus moel leman yarik yomim al mamlakte. Oh, that is the way that he's going to have long years on his kingship if he will listen even to this mitzvah kala shel novi. Which means that if he won't listen to a mitzvah kala shel novi, then God forbid he won't be married yomim al mamlakte. Yeah, what is he doing? We take a mitzvah kala shel novi. So comes along Rashi and he says, Miklal hen atashamel. That's a lesson in the Gemara, that from knowing about yes, you hear no. Yeah, Miklal hen atashamel. In other words, that if you listen to even a mitzvah kala shel novi, then he will have a long life on his kingship. From that year, if he doesn't listen, then he'll have a short life. He won't have a long life. Yeah, Miklal hen atashamel. So Rashi says, you want an example? V'chein motzinu b'Shaul, Shaul HaMelech, when he was the first king of over the Yidden, and this is right at the beginning of his rulership, right, mamish, in the first year or 2 years of his rulership. Sha'omer Shmuel, that Shmuel said to him, Shivas Yomim Toichal Ad Boy Eilecha Lahalis Oila. You shall wait. Tochal means to wait. You shall wait 7 days until I will come to you, and I will offer up a burnt offering. I will offer a oil. What oil means a burnt offering. Uksiv, and it's written what actually happened. Yeah, Vayuchal Shivas Yomim. He waited 7 days, Shaul, but he couldn't hold out the full 24 hours of the last 7 days. And when things will certainly explain things were getting hot, he couldn't take it. He couldn't wait another few hours. He couldn't hold out anymore. He couldn't wait. Shmuel said to him, wait for me 7 full days, and then I'll come to see you, and I will offer up the korban oila. And Shaul waited 7 days, but he couldn't wait the whole of the 7th day. And all he just offered up the oil. He couldn't finish offering up the oil. Well, he did it. Shmuel, all of a sudden Shmuel shows up and he's just offered up the oil. So Shmuel says to him, what are you doing? I said I had to come and I have to offer the oil. What are you doing? Niskalto. Niskalto means you have acted foolishly. You've done a big, what do you call it, shtus. Niskalto. Kasher lo shamata, that you didn't listen to what I told you. And now you should know you're going to be a king for quite a few years, but it's not going to last. You won't hold out. Oh, says Rashi, oh, now you see, Shebishvil mitzvah kala shel novi nena. But we see because of a light mitzvah of a novi, then Shaul was punished in the way that it hit the very essence of his kingship. And therefore, Laman Yarik Laman is a condition, Miklal Hen Atashomeya love. And because he didn't listen to that little mitzvah of a novi, boom. The novi already told him that your kingship is not going to last. Now what was happening over there, if you look careful in the whole story, you'll see that Shmuel Hanavi was told by the Abish that he should elect a king. And he was told by the Abish that Shaul is the one. And they'd already anointed Shaul as the king. He was already anointed, and it was a tremendous, how do you call it, pomp and splendor with the guns, arichas, with the guns, duties. They elected Shaul HaMelech. And he was already the king, and he'd been anointed by Shmuel. But the whole description, how it is over there, of the regality of the whole inyam of the guns, arichas. Comes along after all this, Shmuel says to Shaul, look, it's going to be trouble from these Plishtim. It's well known that in the early years, when the Eden came down south, they had a lot of trouble from the Plishtim. And so one of Shaul's big jobs was that he fought the Plishtim heavily. So he said that the Plishtim are going to come and make trouble. They're going to try and invade us and attack. And he said, you have to go down to a place called Gilgal, and you have to gather together all the army and the whole doings. And he said the Plishtim are going to be already gathering together their forces, and it's going to be a very tense situation. But you must wait 7 days before you do anything. You must wait there 7 days, and then I'll come along, and we'll offer up a oilo as way of asking Hashem to give us bracha v'atzlacha. This oilo is a very key thing. It's like a korban that we're going to offer up to Hashem. But he said, you're not going to offer it, I have to offer it, says Shmuel. I got to offer it. So, if you look at all the great Mefarshim, and you try and break your head, what was he in it? What did he want Shmuel would do? What would be so terrible if Shaul, he was already the king, what would be so terrible if he didn't wait 7 days? I mean, that there's a warfare situation developing. It could be the waiting, the time was tactically not good in Shaul's eyes. Maybe he saw all this tension gathering with the guns do it. Maybe it would have been better for him not to wait the 7 days. And was it the whole terrible thing if he offers up the korban or Shmuel Hanavi offers the korban? Ma'inav Kemina Bedova. So the more you look at the Mefarshim, the more you won't find what was enough Kemina. You don't seem to find any reason why Shmuel said that to him. No, then Shmuel was trying the situation to see if Shaul would be listening to him, would be batil to him, what he was denying. And so he said, as Vibal Shmuel is the Navi, and he says kach v'kach, then you stand on your head, you got to do it. And if you don't, the Rachman Klan, it's not going to be good. And that was or even of what you might call trying out Shaul to see if he fitted into the necessities of a king who would last forever on the Jewish peoples, meaning he and his son. So it comes along the pasuk over there in Shmuel, and it says that had you waited for me, then you would have been an everlasting king over the Jewish people. That's going to come. He said, you didn't, sorry, but your kingship is not going to hold. And even though it was only much later when he didn't fight Amalek properly, you know the whole story. Then Shmuel said to him again that your mouth is going to break. But then it began to break. But the shurish of it was not the Maizim Amalek. The shurish of the Indian of the fault of Shaul Milchemes Amalek, that was a later thing. And that was like you might call the Machir Bepatish. That was like the finality of it. That was like the last knock that blew everything. But what began the whole thing was this Indian here, this so-called mitzvah kala, like I think that, and therefore the more you look into it, the more it doesn't make any real sense. What did Shmuel want of him? They had to wait 7 days. And it's written in the pasuk that why did Shaul get anxious? Because the Plishtim were gathering around, and they were gaining tactical gatherings. You know, they were sort of, how do you call it, trenching in different places. And he, as a war leader, as a general, as the leader of all the forces, he was the king. He wanted to get cracking and get at them, as you might say. Not like the king, not like the people over here nowadays. Money in its time. But they want to let our enemies get at us. And then say, well, look, we can't do anything. It's just a small little Medina. We don't have any army. We can let them get at us. We can't possibly get at them. Money in its time. Oh, but Shaul wasn't that way. Oh, no, he wasn't. In that way, he was a proper king. He wanted to get cracking. But he had a mitzvah of a Nori that he had to wait. And it's very tense over there. It got on the last day and he see Shmuel didn't come. All of a sudden he said, well, what's enough to minute? I'll offer up the court. I'll make it. Comes along Shmuel and he says, where's the court? And he said, I already offered it. He said, oh, you can't. You're not going to be a permanent king. You could have been, but you're not. That's not the show works. The fact that as you look in all the conditions, you can't really find what was Shmuel's reason. Element, we have to say that Shmuel's reason was he wanted to try Shaul. He wanted to hold him in a tense moment, whether he would be batel to the no. And the fact Rashi goes out of his way to tell me a whole big reason. That's unusual for Rashi to tell me a story and draw me a klal, miklal hein, a tashul me'alav, with a whole big reason. Yeah, Rashi could have said that was written as kol hachukim ha'ela v'divrei Torah k'mashmoei levilti shor min ha'mitzvah to Rabbanan. Or other inyanim which are not so clear in the Torah, the king has to obey them also. So says Rashi, no, it goes so far. Yeah, that's even talking about a mitzvah kala from the Novi himself. The Novi himself made such a condition. Amos, he made it Hashem Hashem. He didn't just say stam, do it, but it didn't seem to fit into the picture. Favua, lama here, because nonetheless the king is going to be brought to that, and that's the testing ground as to whether he's a king. Well, we have to say that with that, Rashi is mechadish a whole inyan. Rashi is megala to us a gather in the whole inyan from Malchus. How it is by Yidden that a melech is batel to the Novi. And the whole inyan of a melech is the Gilei Elakus alidei, a person like a Novi. And the whole inyan of a king is only to carry out instructions of the Eibishter, how they come through Gilei Elakus la'avod of Hanaviyah. And that's inyan of a melech. If he fits that, and that's going to be unquestioning by the king. If he fits that, then he's a king ad infinitum. Meaning he ubono. If not, then he can't be a king over the. He can't be a king over the Yid. Was it mitamid? If we go with that yesod, that Rashi's gone out of his way here to reveal to me the whole idea of a kingship by the Jewish people, then it will be understandable. Another thing over there in Shaul, in the story of Shaul with Shmuel and Ovi, the whole beginning of Shaul's kingship is connected with the first pasuk where it's written that when you come into the country and you will say, I want to place on myself a king like all the goyim asher svivoi saw it. Now Rashi doesn't say anything about that. Tantalizingly enough, Rashi hooked up them gordons. He just begins, lo yabe lo yisusi, place on yourself a king. Also Rashi doesn't say. What's going on with this business that the Yidden are going to come into Eretz Yisrael and they're going to settle in Eretz Yisrael and conquer and settle? It's clear that you can't have a king until you first of all conquered everything and you've got all the Yidden settled in Eretz Yisrael. But then the Yidden are going to say, don't hold your things like that. According to the Kishva Arizal. And come to it, the Yidden are going to say they want a king. And they want a king, kol hagoyim asher svivoi. But they want a king like all the goyim which are around. What is it doing? Rashi doesn't say anything. Quite an old thing. Then comes again the pasuk and it says, "Oh yeah, you should make a king. Soim tosim alecha." Now over there in Sefer Shmuel, it tells the whole story that Shmuel Hanavi was getting already old. Shmuel Hanavi wasn't as young as he used to be. So the Yidden came to Shmuel and they said to him, we want a king. And they said, Mamish is our Lashon, but a little bit different than what's written here. They said, we want a king that he should judge us like all the Goyim around us. That all the Goyim have kings. We want a king, he should judge us like all the Goyim. He should go out on our wars and he should lead us to war, but I couldn't do it. So it's written that Shmuel got tremendously angry with that. There's a tremendous mussar which Shmuel gave the Jewish people. It's in the Haftorah, or Pasha Koirach of all things. But that's a big, we could, Bedajin wasn't the connection with Pasha Koirach, but you can't have everything at one go. So anyway, over there in Pasha Koirach, brings a little bit, but before that in the Pesukim there's a long, heated mussar, what Shmuel Hanavi really goes to town against the Yidden. How dare they ask for a king? So everybody said, what did it tell you? How dare they ask for a king? It's written in the Torah, chap, that the Yidden are going to ask for a king, and then you should make yourself a king or whatever. What did Shmuel get so angry for? What's the second to say? Parega. Of a tremendously so. And even after he'd already anointed Shaul HaMelech, he said, this is B'David, you shouldn't really ask for a king, but now you got him, and let's hope he'll be good, and they're doing this. And then immediately afterwards, he already saw he wasn't going to kill him. So, what was he so angry about? So many are the answers which are given to that. And the Rambam, in the halachas, in Hilchos Malachim, inside the Sefer halachas, the Rambam said kasher in there for him for Torah. And it's very interesting what the Rambam says. The Rambam says the Yidden should have been satisfied with Shmuel. They don't really need a king. If you've got a Novi, then you don't really need a king. Well, you've got a Novi, and he's a Emes a Novi, you don't really need a king. And the fact that they had Shmuel, and they came along and they asked for a king, well, that was already a pagam. That's why Shmuel was so angry. And then others want to say that because they said to him, let him judge us like all the Goy. In other words, that they wanted that he should be a king according to Goyish law, Chas v'Sholom, and use Goyish principles, all sorts of terutzim. I answered why it was certainly you have to choose yourself a king. So the answer given by the Chaim HaKadosh and by many of the great Mefoshim, it comes out that Ein Lachanami, to a certain extent, Yidden shouldn't really ultimately ask for a king, particularly the way they were in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu and after they went into Eretz Yisrael, when they had very great spiritual leaders, and it got down to far Shmuel Hanavi. They shouldn't really ask for a king. Because Yidden bottled to the Eivester. The Eivester revealed himself to the Yidden, Mamish Begola on Mount Sinai, and he gave them a Navi like Moshe Rabbeinu, and the other Naviim, as is written here in Sefer Devarim, they're like a Hemshech, Moshe Rabbeinu. But the king rules over you through the Naviim. Is you don't need a king bepashtet. And the fact that the Torah says, Soim Tosim Alechem Melech, you should place on yourself a king, that's like a min harikot. Well, that's the way these Yidden are going to be. They're going to be weak. We will see that it's going to be a weak situation. Therefore, we have no braver but to give them a mitzvah that they should put on themselves a king. As they learned the Ramban, and another of the great early period commentators, that's the way they learn. However, if Rashi learned it that way, he should have said something. Rashi doesn't say anything. He starts off with the details of the king. It would seem to, as far as Rashi is concerned, that it's a dollar moving that you'll ask for a king. It's not such a big problem that you'll ask for a king. What happened over there with Shmuel, that he was so braggers about the whole thing. We could say that, like it's written over there clearly, that they said we want him to judge us like all the time. We want. In other words, that they obviously stepped out of line, the Yidden, in the way that they asked him to make a king. Or, as the Rambam said, they should have been satisfied with Shmuel, because they had all the divine rulership through Shmuel. What did they need a king? In other words, it's a dova loiko kosher lahovi. the whole thing. However, we can say that Rashi learns as a hemshech to the whole parsha here. And the whole parsha says you got to have Shoftim, V'Shoitrim, and you got to look after the people. You got to keep a seder. You got to carry out the laws of the Torah, and even certain people, Achman in Islam, have to be put to death if they don't do the right things. Al pi Torah, v'chule v'chule. There has to be a whole seder. You must go up and ask, and you have to be done. If you step out of line, God forbid, you don't do what the Chacham tell you, then it's gefährlich, and it's terrible. And then immediately after that, if you say, I want a king, immediately behemshech like that. So maybe Rashi learns that the way to keep a whole ordered series of judgments and proper inyonim as the generations will go further, then for that you need a king. In other words, that all the shoftim and everybody should have their right authority. There needs to be an over and a chief and leading authority when he gives all of his authority al pi Torah to the shoftim and the Armenian. So then people, if they know that there's a chief shofet, that he's the king over the whole country and everybody's bought it, some people, they'll also be beterim to the shoftim. And that's why it comes immediately after the mitzvah from Shoftim. And therefore Rashi says that if you've got a whole leadership and a whole mishtar, as they call it, according to the Torah, with all these Shoftim, which is just told in the first part of the parasha, you have to bring in, you have to have Eidim, and you have to do all the, it's written all the Tindim of the judges in the first part, that's a verstandige Zach, that when you're told you've got to have a whole thing like that, then you'll say, oh yeah, maybe I have to have a king. If I have a king, then all that will make much better order and be held in a much better way. And I do it. I could call a goyim as we say. That's not that they say we want a king that he should be like the goyim. No, we say that it works. If we look around us, we see that where there's a king, then the whole judgment system of the country holds better together. We're just taking a dogma from what we see by other countries and by other nations. Although not that it should be that way. And the far comes along the Torah and it tells you, you took Taka have a king, but he has to be a king Asher Yivcha Hashem Elakecha Boy. It's got to be a king what the Eibishter will choose him. Asher Yivcha Hashem Elakecha Boy, and he's got to be in such a way that he'll be guarded. He won't have susim, and he won't have too many viber, and he won't have too much money with a gunzer, in such a way that he won't turn away even a mitzvah kala shel afilu and a mitzvah kala shel novi. Aber yesh lema, what the Torah was saying is that a Yid will take a look at the goyim asher sfi v'soy, and he'll see that in order for a whole judgment system to really hold together, then the king is what gives it its basis. Aber Vibalis by Yidden, the whole Indian is based on the Eibishter. And that was the trouble when Shmuel Hanavi was already like a king. He was a king over the whole people, as is well known. Shmuel Hanavi is, what's not good? What do you have to have a king? Od b'noisef lazeh. So it's all for the sake of keeping the system of judgment in its proper way. Aber the system of judgment by Yidden is another system of judgment. It's a system of judgment that works only al pi Dvar Hashem and al pi Divrei Torah's Hashem. And the king himself has got to be as a mensch that he's Yivcha Hashem Elakecha Boy. That the Eibishter will choose you the king. The Eibishter will choose you the king. So how are you supposed to know? The Eibishter chose the king. How are you supposed to know who the Eibishter chooses? We walk around now that the Eibishter chose Ploini Ben. Even Ploini, how are we supposed to know? Maybe he's just he's a big macher and he's got a lot of followers. How do we know? Well, that's where the Novi comes into it. The union of the king is got to be al pi hanovi. And the Rambam, Paskins, Hilchos Malachim, right at the very beginning. If you look it up, you'll see it's the last portion in the Rambam. Hilchos Malachim Umilchamei Seihem, that's its full name. And the Rambam writes over there in the second or third halacha The Rambam writes that you can't put a king over Yidden from the beginning. How do you start off with a king with his family? If he's going to have worthy sons to come after him, it's only through the Sanhedrin Shel Shivim V'Echad, the full Sanhedrin, V'Novi B'Yisrael. It's got to be both the Sanhedrin and a Novi. If you don't have either of them, you can't really start off an emissary king by the year. So everybody says, well, you need both the Sanhedrin and the Novi. So why does the Rambam require both a Novi and the Sanhedrin? Because those are the two koiches in Torah by Yidden. There's first of all the Novi, what he reveals things. He just says, Mami, he gives over Dvar Hashem, maybe things that you need to know even after the Torah has been given. And he tells you in Yonim which are directly Dvar Hashem, and the Inyan of the Sanhedrin is the koach of the Rabbanon, the koach of the Makable, HaTorah Shebal Peh, and the Makable HaTradition, and the Masoiras, that they've been Makable also from Moshe Rabbeinu, and they're the koach of the Torah Shebal Peh, and they have to paskin the halachas of the Torah, a combination of Gilu Elakus al Pi Anovi and Gilu Elakus al Pi Masoiras Hashem, Torah Shebal Peh. Without that, you can't have a king, and that's the pshat. Yivchar Hashem Elokecha Bo. But the Eibush chose the king in a pshat that side Torah Gilu al Pi Novi and side Inif and Torah Shebal Peh. They have to give the okay. The king is a person, Al-Pi Torah, that his whole Metzias is batel and came about through the directives directly of people. What in Yonam is Gilu Elakus Al-Pi Torah. Dahainu Hanovi and the Gilu of Torah Shebal Peh Al-Pi the Sanhedrin. Without that, he can't be a king. The whole inif in the king, his whole Metzias is what Elakus, what the Eibush made him Al-Pi Torah into a king. Otherwise he doesn't have any Metzias, he has no power. Ein Lekol Yisod of a king. Comes along Rashi, as we just pointed out. Rashi goes even further. Rashi says that the Ikar Bittul of the king is to the Novi. Ein Nachanami, he has to be brought to the Sanhedrin. Well, he's got a new inyan about him, that if there's a Novi, Bizmanahu, then the king's got to be completely subservient to the Novi, because the Novi is the inyan of Gil Elakus, what we need to know right now. You know that we need to know, Bizdoerahu or Bizmanahu. The king's whole inyan is only the Eibush. He's chosen by the Eibush. He's just a vehicle of the Eibush. That's what the king is. He's Elakus, bottled Elakus. He's got to listen to what the Novi says. And if the Novi says you've got to stand on your head for 2 days, he's got to stand on his head for 2 days. That's Korunis told. And therefore the Novi said you have to wait for 7 days. I had to push him back. What's going to be? It's a general. He sees he's losing all his tactical supremacy. And that's it. He could offer up Oila. Okay, we'll offer up Oila. Let's offer up to... he couldn't hold out. And Shmuel said to him, but we see Ad Kama, the Inyan is Negeya, the Bittul of the Melech to the Novi. And that's what Rashi is Machadi. The Rashi tells us that the Melech, the Gabi, the Novi, has no Metzias Biatzma. His whole Inyan is that he's Kolol in Elakus. The Novi is Gil Elakus, he's Kolol B'zeh. If he wants to have an Eigen and Metzias Chutz, he said, we'll know. That's what the Shmuel said to him. You're only not going to be a Melech. You just have to live it out for a few years, but it's not going to hold. One in the clock. That's the Sibba. Why in Melchemes HaMolech he didn't listen again? Because it's already blown. The Ikar fuse was already blown. Kesher with the Novi was already blown. And the Kesher with the whole basis, the kingship was already blown. Kein Yesh Lema. But there are mit damit, a lot of things become understandable, that the king has no right, and he has no Matthias in the whole Indian of the life of Eden, only as a vehicle of Gila Elikus, but his Indian is not to be Megala Elikus, he has to be Mekabel from those who are, what their Indian is to be Megala Elikus. But that's the Indian of the Novi. Edefa, we see later on by David HaMelech, what he was the one who came instead of Shaul. And we'll soon see in a minute what's a mile from David HaMelech. Once David HaMelech came along, and we see certain places in the whole rulership of David HaMelech where he was also batel, and he had to ask, and he was directed and given also Musa, but even Masuyam, by Naviim. Well, at the beginning it was Shmuel HaNovi himself, but then after the stalkers of Shmuel HaNovi, there was another Novi called Nosan HaNovi, what he occurs in several places in David HaMelech's reign, and he guides David HaMelech and even rebukes him on certain points, and says, Kach v'kach tzarik liyeh. David has no choice but to accept what he said. He's the king, he's the ganze balabas. No, he's not. He's not a balabas, chutz to be a vehicle of Gila Elikus. That's his whole Indian. If there's a Yid, what his Indian is Gila Elikus, ain't malasot. You just have to listen to him, and that's the atzlacha. And if you don't, it's for Kodesh time. Only the Hepech, we say. Hepech atzlacha rachman. And that's a Chiddush din, because there's a din in the Mishnah, Masechta Hoydi Yois. And also the Gemara brings it. Well, no, it's not so much in the Mishnah. It's only hinted at in the Mishnah. In the Gemara, and Masechta Hoydi is what the Gemara says, that there can be certain halachas, a king is prior to a Novi. For example, you find an Aveda of a king, you find an Aveda, or you got on a Paspuda finding a lost thing of a Novi. You have to busy yourself with the king's one first, give him, then you can worry about the Novi. And other inyanim, even to the extent of maybe saving their lives, if it's a question of who to save, you have to save the king for it. But other inyanim are brought down that there's a mile in the COVID of the Melech over the, as it were, the COVID of the Novi. And yet here we see that the king's completely batel to the Nevi'im. If we could suggest, Yesh Shloima, that the two inyanim, that over there we're talking about the etzem COVID of the goof of the Melech, then the Melech being as he is. Like we saw yesterday in the Shur in Samafot, but negate to Kesem Malchus. But that's a certain meaning which is negate a Kedusha, which has been revealed in a certain mishpacha. What that becomes David HaMelech of Kol El. We'll soon mention that in a second. But there's certain inyanim, like it's written in the brachas of Yankiv, to the Yidden, that Yehuda was Zeich in the union from Malchus, with Yehuda, Shevet Yehuda, David HaMelech from Shevet Yehuda. But they took the union from Malchus ad sof kol olam. There's a certain COVID in the Etzem Metzias of Shevet Yehuda, in particular, Mishpachas David HaMelech, but that's a Kedusha mitzad, no matter what they carry in themselves, the COVID of the Malucha. Mashing a Novi can be from anybody. A Novi can come mitzad Kedusha Satzma, he can come. It's two different things. That's a eating from COVID, Gufi Shal Melech and Inyoni Shal Melech also position in certain hierarchies by Yidden, and Novi is another Indian Benegete. When the Novi talks in the name of Hashem, and the Novi gives over B'Shem Hashem, and Avua, and he said the Kach v'Kach, Oma HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then the Melech is bottled, but that's a bit. Doesn't matter that he might have certain miles over the Novi, when it comes to the Gila Elikus Alei Novi, Ein Lo Mochim Tzal. You have to listen, and V'nish, Afilu HaMitzvah Kala Shel Novi. In other words, that even when the Novi was giving over a Nesoyin in the name of Hashem to try out the king, it's not really a mitzvah which is shayat to the mitzvah Torah. It's a mitzvah Shel Novi, Avu Pikei. You have to be bottled b'tachas a bittul, and it's not a stira from that Gemara in Masechta Hoydi. So that's done by inyan acher. That's another inyan. On that basis, we come to a whole new view of what does it mean, the mitzvah in the Torah, to set up a king. And the whole inyan for this mitzvah of saying Tosim Alech HaMelech, is really a hemshech from what Shmuel Hanavi Tained when he saw that the Yidden said they want a melech. That Shmuel Hanavi said, listen, Yidden are different than the rest of the world. There's no people that the Eibush revealed himself to them as a whole people and given them the Torah, which is Torah Hashem, and that's the basis of the Anhoga of the whole world. Torah the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai. No, it's all from the Torah. And like the Rambam says, you got to tell a goy when you talk to him about Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noyah, you got to tell him that that's Mipi Agvura Alidei Moshe Rabbeinu. That's from the Eibush to Alidei Moshe Rabbeinu. There's that's the Yesod of the whole world is Matan Torah Gilel Elikus, and the Sefer Shinuch says that at that particular moment all Yidden were in Oivim for Nevi'im. All the Yidden rose to the Inu for Nevuah when Hashem spoke the Aseret Sadibra. So that's a difference of opinion as to where they heard the whole Aseret Sadibra. They heard two. Rashi brings down they only heard two. But actually here they heard the Aseret Sadibra. And from that moment on, Yidden became a Mamleches Koyanim. They were a leading kingly people over the whole world. And if a person like Shmuel Hanavi, he tells you don't need really a king, Begolov. The Eibush is your king. Yidden have the ability to just live al pi Torah. They don't really need anything more. You have a need for something more, the Eibush gives you a Novi. What a Novi is a mensch, which called Inyone, he speaks over the Dvar Havai. More than that, you don't need. Was Henachanam, emphasis. Senachon. And that's what Ramban and all the others time, that the whole mitzvah of Melech is like a mini Yerida Azami. But the fact that Rashi doesn't mention that is a sign that there's another way of being Makayim, that Indian, well, that's the mitzvah of having a king. Well, his whole Indian is to carry out that Indian for Matan Torah and to make it real in the lives of all Yidden, because it's hard for people the whole time to be kochens and to bittel to the Eibishter. So you have to have a person over you, that's his whole Indian, is bittel to the Eibishter, the tachlis are bittel, and the far, according to one opinion, he's got to have the Sefer Torah tied onto his arm, he sees the Sefer Torah, as that was stated in the Torah, and he has to remember, the whole regular bilti reim levove. He can't for one moment have any gaiva, feel these episodes of Matia. If a guy that you feel you're a big Matthias, but you're not a Matthias. The Eibush is the Emerson Matthias. Ain't no Milvad. Remember, that's a king. That's what a king is. His whole Matthias is man Ain't no Milvad, and his whole intent is to give that over into the people. Havira El Anosh. And so, therefore, if there happens to be a Novi, then the king's whole intent is the words of the Eibush to the whole people, as if the Novi is Megalit. There's a new word of the Eibush. There's a new meaning that we need to know. That's been Mishgalit. Alidei, the Novi, Bizman Ha'u, like all the great Nevi'im, like Yirmiyahu, he was menabel all the things about the Churban and warning the Yidden and Shrein and Tum. Let's make ourselves the way we should be, and we'll avoid all the terrible charges for Chuli. That's Dvar Hashem for that particular door. The Melech is bottled to that particular people. And therefore, some people on the basis. The Gemara mistake the Hoidi is shouldn't that a Melech's got more skuyot in certain inyanim than what a Novi. They ask Yeshayah why Yeshayahu a Novi. There was one time when Yeshayahu a Novi, he was Makabel a certain Nevuah, and he had to give it over. He wanted it somehow or another to reach Chizkiyahu Melech, and he waited for Chizkiyahu Melech to come to him. He didn't go. So everybody says he's only a Novi. And a Novi is less than a king, according to that Gemara in Hoyre. Why didn't he go over to the king? As a personage, then the Melech's got certain milas over him. But when he's already got an Avua, and the Dvar Havaya, that's the Nevuah, that's the union of a Novi to be Megala, a new revelation of Mami's word of the Eibush, then the king has to come to him. The king is bottled up, he said. And I'm just getting to the Melech. The Melech hears that there's a new Dvar Havaya, he has to come and find out Ma'azeh. Some people ask this kashya. Going to get to Yeshaya Novi, but maybe we could we could answer the shaila. In Vamel Lefise, it's Muvan, the great unbelievable authority, but the great unbelievable responsibility of a king, and therefore the Ramban, as we pointed out at the beginning of the class, he learns the whole Indian of Gaiva, of not being a Matthias, Liatzmach, from the king, because that's his whole Indian. The king's whole Indian is Bittul Gomer to the Dvar Hashem. And from the king you can learn, but again, to the Etzem Indian of not being a Matthias. Amam Elafisa, that Rashi, by telling us this whole Indian, mitzvah kala shel novi, he's megala to us the whole gather, the whole definitional status of kingship by Yidden and the relationship pnimia, the king to the novi, mitzvah the very essence of the king. And that's the mila of David HaMelech over Shaul. I brought down that Shaul was a great man. He was a tremendously great man. And it's brought down in the verses over there that he was higher than all the people. From his shoulder blade, and further he was taller than everybody else. He's very tall, very tremendously impressive individual. So Chassidus is Mavaya. What does it mean? The shechem, the shoulder blade, that's like the chitzonius of the midas. That's the midas. They've gone into the heart and then they sort of spread out in their chitzonius into other parts of the body. It's only the chitzonius of the midas. Even with the chitzonius of his midas, he was already higher than everybody else, let alone the pnimiyah. In other words, he was a very tremendously elevated person, Shaul. What was the problem? That he went according to his idea, instead of Chashav. A holy thinking. Shaul HaMelech had an idea, it was a positive idea, it wasn't a bad idea or a silly idea. But it wasn't according to the Novi. It was no good, it was blown. It couldn't hold. And that's what Rashi tells us here. That really the mission with Amalek is not the beginning of the whole thing. The whole thing, the beginning is there. And that's what David HaMelech is Matake. Therefore, brought down a David, he was the Bittul Gomer, he's the Indian of Malchus Mamish, Bepashtas. David HaMelech is, he knows no kunshim, only the Indian from Dvar Havaya. And there were a couple of times when David HaMelech also had, what you call weak moments, came along the Novi and really, gave Musa to David HaMelech, as it were, and brought him back to the realization after a slight faltering or whatever it may have been. It's hard for us to understand these inyanim. His whole Indian is Bittul Gomer to the Dvar HaNovi. Therefore, the last thing that David HaMelech rules that his son Shlomo is going to be the king, that was through an arousal of Nosson HaNovi. Nosson HaNovi came and said, here's his other sons that they're trying to, Adonai-Yahu, or whatever his name was. He was trying to make himself the king, and he had a lot of followers. So he said, listen, you've got a paskin as the king, who is your successor? And he said, I'm telling you what you got to say. You got to say that it's Shlomo. And that's what the Rambam brings down. That the emissary Indian of Moshiach is that he is Mizera David u Shlomo. Not just from David HaMelech, no, from Shlomo. Abba Lafisa, we could say that David HaMelech, he's the ultimate bittul. He's the ultimate Indian of being bottled completely to Elokut. And therefore, once David HaMelech took over the kingship, then the kingship remains with him ad olam. And all the Zerah after him, they just follow as the Zerah HaMalucha. And it was only a terrible blunder that occurred some hundreds of years after that, but that was when the Malucha was split, when there's Yerovam ben Navad, when he made himself a king in Shomron up there, the Aseret Hashvatim. According to the Mezritch Magid and another Gedolei Talmidei Baal Shem Tov, that was one of the most terrible things that happened to Yidden, that the kingship was split. into two, and Ada Yemaseh were eating the loch. That split that occurred, one in the uniform Malchus based over. Afu became with all the terrible things that involved in that split in the Malchus and the kingship of the Jewish people, who made that Yerovam ben Noah a king, was a Novi. And he was the Baal Shem Tov's Rebbe, the Achia Hashiloini, but he was a Novi. The Rambam brings down that he was a Novi, and he had a Beis Din, but it got to do with that he was the one that he anointed Yerovam ben Noah for certain reasons, that he saw, if not, there's going to be a terrible balagan with the whole Rikas. Therefore he had no choice, and he saw the only way was to make him into a king. But also Al Pi Novi. He went through a Novi, even though Sof it wasn't ultimately the emissary purpose in the kingship of the Yid. But nonetheless was also fun. We see Ad Kama, the whole union from kingship, even if it's getting a bit off the line, it has to be completely bottled to the union of the Novi. That's what we find. The Benegetu, the whole union from mitzvahs, Minui HaMelech, the Rebbe that Tzemach Tzedek brings down in mitzvahs Minui HaMelech, in Derech Mitzvah Secha. The Rebbe that Tzemach Tzedek is Mavai over there, the Mila of David HaMelech over Shaul. Why David HaMelech, once he became king, then he was the one, only his Zerah, only they have the right to be the kings over Yidden. Rambam brings it down the halacha, and the Rambam, interestingly enough, the Rambam writes barichas about that. He doesn't say it in a couple of words, but he writes a whole sort of tremendously rich view of why it is that David HaMelech has to be, from now on, once he was Yeshiv al Kisei Israel, that there can't really be any kings after David, only he of Bazar. Ad Sof Kol Ha'olam, Ad Sof Kol HaTeiros, is only David HaMelech. So in the Maim over there, Mitzvah Minui HaMelech, the Rebbe that Tzemach Tzedek Mavai, the whole union, a very Bekitzer Nimrat, he brings down the famous statement in the Alpid Shimoini, it's a Medrash, in Bereshis, and also Mavua in the Zohar Kodesh, the Loshen Tzad, the David HaMelech really, he was what he called a child that couldn't live. He was, when he was born, he should have died. He didn't have any life of his own. What do you call a child like that? Huh?
Premature?
Yeah, no. There's something stillborn. Stillborn. He should have been. He didn't have any courage to live, David HaMelech. So it's written that he lived till 70 years. It's written that Avraham Avinu gave him 5, and Yitzchak gave him a Zoifel, this one gave him so much, and that Yosef HaTzadik gave him 37 years, and somebody else gave him a Zoifel, and he lived till 70 years. Add them all together, and he got 70 years. And then it's written that Adam HaRishon gave him another 70 years. So the question is, he should have lived 140. Why did he have 70? Adam HaRishon 70 is too high. It's not able to give him Chaim Gashmiyim, but it gave him a tremendous milah that in his kingship, even though he was a king, which is Malchus, which is he also had Chokhmah Eloah. In other words, the greatest level of Chokhmah was Meir into Malchus. Therefore, David HaMelech is not called Stam spirits of Malchus, and neither is Shlomo. No, they're called Chokhmah Sheba Malchus, particularly Shlomo. They're called Chokhmah Sheba Malchus, but they had this amazing gift that there was Meir in there. And with the Rebbe that Tzemach Tzedek says, Meir, a king, you need a king for simple people, for people you need to sort of show them and boss them around and make mishpats and all sorts of, there were a lot of hidden big Talmidei Chachamim and big people in the time, when the kings first started, what did they need a king for? Maybe that was one of the Tainim. What did they need a king for? Or the pastures, B'Peil Mamish. So the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek answers that Ein Nachanami. Emes Malchus Yisrael is Malchus based David. David HaMelech, he was a man like a Chacham. Like it's brought down that one of the people who was it. That's the guys, the Isha Hatikuyis. She said about David HaMelech, you have Chacham Sadineinu HaMelech Chacham Selakim. He said that the wisdom of our king, our Lord, the king is like the wisdom of the Eibishter. In other words, it was an unbelief. So that made David HaMelech, even though the big Talmidei Chachamim and the big, they were batil also to Chachmas David and to the Inif and Shlomo. It's only he writes over there that So in the later kings, Lavdavki, that they had, because we see in history that they didn't have the Chokmas David, but they had the Mila from Malchus al Kapani. They were Zera David, even though they didn't have the Tachlis HaShleiman of David HaMelech. The father, David HaMelech Senior, was only Kili Elikus, and therefore his whole inyan was, like we said before, he's not a Matthias Le'atzme, he's not a ruler over the people, he is a Gilui of the Rotzen Hashem, in order that the whole thing should hang together. And if there's any wars to be made, then it's Milchemes Hashem. And therefore the Rambam writes that David HaMelech was Nilcham Milchemes Hashem, picked this every, he says, like Abi Moshiach. In other words, that a Jewish king doesn't stam slogans of Mitgoyim, go make wars, only when this is a Inyan Al Pi Hashem, as the Daf is Zayzai. Picked this every year. Mamish is every night. To save the Jewish people, to save the world. Because the Muslims are taking over the whole world. Do you realize that they're going to build in London, England, they're going to build a mosque which is bigger than all the other tumas. All the churches which have been standing there for generations, Lahavdil, are going to be like little mount moles. They're going to be just ant moles. They're going to be just mosque that they're going to build. And the whole world is complaining about it. And the Meshuganim, the Prime Minister, says, oh, if they got the money, let them do it. Oh, do they have the money? Ooh, they have. They own most all the banks and all the big businesses in England anyway. And they're just waiting for the world to get a little bit weak, and then they're just going to take over. What's happening over here is that they're just giving it into their hands. And they're saying, yeah, take the Golan, take everything, take the whole outside. I mean, we're in the most terrible situation, but I want to talk about, I want you guys to have a good Shabbat. I don't want you to be worried about the situation, but it's very, very terrible. I state that that's exactly the Inyan of David HaMelech. When he fought a war, it was Milchemes Hashem. It was only a thing was necessary, Al Pi Elikus, for the sake of the Jewish people. So there were certain wars that David HaMelech made where he seemed to be conquering other areas, and so the Gemara said that was also Milchemes Hashem. It was also for the purpose of bringing the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, Mitadei Zitam HaYadua, Le'inyanim L'Makayim Elul V'chulu V'sein Kana Mokat L'Harek. Aber Stamm schlagen zu Jeden don't have any in it. Stamm machen war, Jeden don't have any in it, but they're cloud. Now we come to Lafizeh, we come to an amazing in we're going to get to Melech HaMashiach. That's how we're going to be time the class. And that is that the Inyan of the Melech, B'Yisrael, is bittul. His whole Inyan is Malchus Hashem B'Golui. David HaMelech is Chokmas Hashem B'Teicha Malchus, what they're going to say. And it's all just Kiddush Elikus, therefore bottled to Novi. That Kiddush completely bottled to Novi, even to a mitzvah Kala. The Inyan of Melech HaMashiach is that he's going to be both together. He's going to be both a Melech Mita Novi B'Yachad. In other words, that Melech HaMashiach is going to be bottled to his own Novi. He's going to be the Novi. In other words, you'll have both Milos. You'll have both the Milo of the king and the Novi together. And therefore the Rambam writes in Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam writes that Melech HaMashiach will be a Novi Godel, Kimat Kimoi Moshe Rabbeinu, almost like Moshe Rabbeinu. So it was almost. Why not completely? Yes, some people say that Moshe Rabbeinu, he brought the Torah into the world. That's a thing that nobody ever is going to do anymore. Mamish to be Megala the Torah, Mount Sinai. You can never reach that mile. But mitzad the etzem nevuah, you can be on the same madrega. Mitzad the etzem power of nevuah, you can be on the same madrega. So the Rambam writes that that's going to be the nevuah of Melech HaMashiach. So they need that Melech HaMashiach should be a Novi. Make Melech HaMashiach a größer Mensch, and you have a Novi, Macheb's a Novi, and be a Novi, Melech HaMashiach. Melech HaMashiach is going to be the sleimus of the Malchus, that he's going to be so sholem in the Inyan of Malchus, that the Inyan of the Elikus will just be misgala through him, without any necessity to be totally begilui alakus derech hakeres. That will come through a novi or somebody. He himself will be the pipeline to Cheskeit side the etzem malucha and side the inyan of the navur. And Mamela, that's the unbelievable koyach of Melech HaMashiach. That he'll be the shleimus aki gedola in the mina odom. He'll be a miller, and he'll be a. And the truth of the matter is that Moshe Rabbeinu had both of those milas, as is well known, and therefore it's brought down that Moshe Goyel Rishon and Moshe Goyel Acharoin. That even though Melech HaMashiach will be from Shevet Yehuda, and Moshe Rabbeinu is not from Shevet Yehuda, he's from Shevet Levi, but nonetheless there'll be in Melech HaMashiach all those milas that there were in Moshe Rabbeinu. Therefore it'll be Moshe Goyel Rishon and Moshe Goyel Acharoin. And mit will be able to appreciate what the Rebbe writes, the Tzaddik writes at the end of that Maimah about the Minui Melech, and he talks about Melech HaMashiach. And he says that the Inyan for Melech HaMashiach, being as he is, the Shleimus, that he'll have that Inyan of Malchus, of the ability of rulership, absolute rulership. On the other hand, he'll have also the unbelievable wisdom that David HaMelech had, but he'll also have the Inyan for Navuah. He said everybody will have to be bottled to Melech HaMashiach b'tachlis hapitul. So he says, why do I say that? What's the chiddush? He said, because when Melech HaMashiach is mizgala, then it's going to be tremendous gilui haTorah b'chol ha'olam. Everybody's going to be Talmidei Chacham, doesn't matter who. All Yidden are going to have knowledge of the Torah, which will be mizgala alidei ha'gilui she'iyeh b'zman ha'hu. If people will say, oh, we're all got tremendous gilui, what do we need, what do we need this big guy that he's skilled telling us everything, we have to listen to him and do it? So the Rebbe Tzaddik says that the Chachma, how it will be by Melech HaMashiach, will be so immense and so great that all the Yidden, no matter how great will be their Talmidei Chacham, they'll have to be bottled to that. In other words, like that, they'll have to be like Vadim. Have to be like simple servants of Melech HaMashiach, because his gilui will be so awesome that no matter how great will be your knowledge, you'll be, as it were, bottled to him like a Eved, and that will come with these unbelievable. Therefore, he says that Melech HaMashiach will be both a teacher and a king. He'll be called Rabbeinu and Malkeinu. That's a chapter to the Rebbe that tells us. It's a very amazing piece. You should look it up and learn it at the end of Mitzvahs Minei HaMelech when I get to Melech HaMashiach. And there was, it doesn't matter who you are, you'll be the greatest Talmud Chacham, that you'll know everything Shebekol HaTorah Kula. When you hear Melech HaMashiach, you say, ooh, well, and like after that, you'll be like an Eved, you'll become a Eved. I mean, that's what it takes. He'll teach you, but he'll teach you in such a way that you become a Eved. He'll be talking Malkeinu, he'll be talking Rabbeinu, of in them Gufa, he'll be Malkeinu. Whether he will teach you, but once you hear what he's teaching you, then you'll realize that you've got to become an Eved. What do you say about that, guys? So he's up the Rebbe to Talmud Tzaddik in the mind of Mitzvahs Minui Melech. Well, that's exactly where we're holding right now. That's exactly the Matthias of Einyanim Mamish K'Moshe Zachar. The Rebbe has revealed everything that anybody needs to know. And no matter how the biggest Talmidei Chacham, I don't mean any begin, anybody's COVID, Talmidei Chacham. But the Rebbe's inyan that he revealed, you can see that the benefit of the biggest Talmidei Chacham was when they will listen to what the Rebbe said. And if they would have only done it years ago, then who knows, we would have avoided an unbelievable almost never. And the Rebbe said that way back in Toshin Kof, and I even saw a letter the other day even before that, where the Rebbe said that the Da'atiyim, the religious people in Eretz Yisrael, and out throughout the world. And it's an amazing thing. I just saw an article in a English Jewish newspaper where it's written that a big doctor, that he also wears a kippah, that he says in another few years that the Fruma Yidden are going to be the majority of the whole community in the British Isles. All the Yidden in the British Isles, the majority are going to be Fruma Yidden. Why? Because they're multiplying, bli ayin hara. The Friar don't, they don't multiply, and they don't really care much about the future. the Frumma Yidden are building the future of the Jewish community. I say, Kacha Omer. So the Rebbe said that years ago. The Rebbe said years and years and years ago. The Frumma Yidden, are going to have tremendous power that they could have, political, economical, you name it, any word, power, because they're going to be multiplying at a much greater rate than any other portion of the community. And the Rebbe said if that power will be united, and all the Frumma Yidden will think similarly on certain inyonim, and they will say certain inyonim, b'koil echad, that they will be able to run the whole of Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe said it way back in Tovshin Yud Ches or Tovshin Yud Tes. So make a cheshbon, how many years ago that is? 50 years ago, 48. My arithmetic was never particularly. Everything is only what it's all happening. Mamish bull. But it's happening in a way that it could have happened, not that it's really happening the way he wanted it. Because you got all these Talmidei Chachamim that they say, oh yes, he's a nice man, little about you, but we know better, we also know. It's very hard for them to be makabel, to beetle to, that you have to be an Eved, like Rabbi Melech HaMashiach, no matter how great your wisdom is. But for those who decided that they're ready to do that, they're making good progress. And unfortunately, even in our own ranks, we have a certain trace of this. I'm not going to be married, but there's all this paraphernalia here. I don't want to get involved in saying things which what you can call it. But however, suffice it to say that the Nakuda is that we've got to become potter to Melech HaMashiach, and the sooner we do it, the better for the whole world. Because the whole world is running into tremendous tzorah, dafke from the people that the Israeli government, Kaviyachol, wants to give everything back to, or give everything to, not back. The Hainu, the Arabs, and in the Arabs' Gufa, the most criminal and terrible elements amongst them. And that same element is spreading throughout the whole world with tremendous power and speed. It's a question of weeks and months before they gain power throughout the whole world. And this was in England, so I happened to pick up they're going to be building the biggest mosque in the world in London. And it was written in this newspaper that I read that when you come down on a plane into London airport, the first thing you'll see is this big mosque. That's cake. Well, I mean, it's not funny. But why? I mean, that's like a diabolical laugh. Because nobody wants to listen to Melech HaMashiach. Nobody wants to listen to it. And everybody says, oh yeah, we also understand. Now look at the way you understand. Yeah, you understand. And the same thing what the Rebbe said, everything he says, everything bull to the smallest little tag on the letters. The only hope for the world is to listen to that little tag on the top of the letter. And it's not going to help us. It's just getting worse and worse because we haven't really given ourselves away to the Chokhmah Shebesfiras HaMalchus Alidei Melech HaMashiach, and to the Nevuah. And he's going to be such a great king that he's going to be bottled to his own Nevuah. He's going to be the Novi with the Melech Tzazam. So I wish we have a good Shabbos P Shoftim. And it was on this Shabbos P Shoftim in Tovshin Elul that the Rebbe gave over the whole Sikha, that the Frierdiker Rebbe would not be, and that he's an oath. He said clearly about himself that he's an oath. Stay taught in the Sikha. And that all the Rebbeim were Nevi'im Bisman. So what's a Novi? A Novi isn't the biggest person in the whole world, the Hainu the Melech. He has to listen to what the Melech says. That's his whole leader. Who's there? Who's up to Novi? So you can be the biggest Rashki Bahag, you can be the biggest Balabas in the world, but you got to listen to the Novi. And Hashem should help the sooner the better, and the sooner the happier for the whole world. And the Omen Kainihi, Lord train, and it should be in a good way and in a happy way, away from Simcha to Levov. Take from here, we'll find ourselves together with the Rebbe. There's plenty of time until Shabbos tonight. It's only Thursday night. In Heref Ayin, that's a Heref Ayin. A Heref Ayin, and anything can be. You can all be sitting in the next couple of hours. We can all be in Yerushalayim. There's Bebeis Mitashenu, mit Mishachenu Malkeinu. Malkeinu Mishachenu. It's Omer Keini Hirot. So, who's going to say it?
Hey, I'm the man who made the